So we're going to talk about naming the harm. So as we said before, in the term microaggressions, the micro is definitely misleading. They aren't small slights. They're not casual comments. Their impact on an individual's mental health and overall well-being is profound and is generally very far-reaching. So picture this. You have a person targeted by a remark or an action. They grapple with a sense of hurt because they're struggling to pinpoint why they're affected. But on the flip side, the person providing these remarks or actions are generally unaware of the harm that they're inflicting. And so it creates a complex and unspoken tension in our educational spaces that have very real consequences for our ability to do the work. So for our most vulnerable members of the BIPOC community, the K-12 students, the echoes of microaggressions can carry a weight that's heavier than the subtle nature applies. For our young learners, these seemingly minor interactions can cast long shadows over their school experience, starting from kindergarten all the way up until their high school experience. These constant barrage of attacks can erode a student's sense of self, of self-worth, of well-being, and it can essentially strangle their potential. These experiences risk entangling their academic and social development in a web of doubt and confusion. It becomes our collective charge as educators and as advocates to dismantle these barriers, ensuring that every kid can stride confidently on their educational journey, unburdened by the weight of these hidden biases, often by the adults that they trust the most. So let's look at a real life scenario from a diverse urban school where a seemingly well-intentioned decision had unintended consequences. This story illustrates the concept of intent versus impact and its relevance in our daily interactions. So in our first slide, we have a teacher. In this scenario, we have Mai, who's a new student who recently moved to the United States with her family. Mai's parents were fluent in English and believed that their daughter's transition into the American educational system will be super smooth. During the registration meeting, Mai seemed quiet and withdrawn. When addressed directly by school officials, she would often shake her head or use gestures to respond to adults. On her first day of class, Mai was assigned to the smaller ESOL classroom, where the school hoped to support Mai's transition by offering English for speakers of other languages classes, believing it would help her to adapt to English more easily and make her more comfortable. Mai was placed in these classes for over 2 weeks, based on the school's perception that she might struggle with English. This decision, while well-intentioned, made Mai feel misunderstood and overlooked. So during the back to school night, Mai's parents learned about the ESOL placement, and they were just as concerned as to why their fluent English-speaking daughter didn't have access to the general education classroom. They were frustrated that they weren't informed of this decision during registration, and they were worried that it was going to limit Mai's access to the regular curriculum and impact her academic experience for years down the line. So Mai's parents met with the school to get a better understanding. The school recognized their unintended impact. They recognized their unintended impact and reassessed Mai's placement, fully involving the parents in the decision-making process. So Mai was eventually placed back in regular education classes where she thrived academically. But let's think about this scenario, keeping in mind the concept of intent versus impact. How did the school's well-intentioned actions inadvertently affect Mai and her family? What lessons can we draw from this story as we explore the dynamics of what you intend versus what the impact is on the receiver of our interactions that are rooted in our own hidden biases? So Dr. Sue refers to these hidden messages that guide our decisions as metacommunications. Recognizing these metacommunications is a crucial step in addressing racial microaggressions. It can allow both allies and targets to better understand the hidden biases and beliefs that may be at play. So if we go back to Mai's example in the case study, the school assumed that a new student of Asian background who was not engaging with the staff during their first initial meeting must have been a non-English speaker because she didn't speak when she was addressed directly. She was placed in an ESOL class without consulting with her parents, and the parents didn't learn about her placement well into the back to school night. Right? So their actions convey the belief that students who are of Asian descent, who are not English speakers by default, they must have learning needs, and out of care and concern, they put her in a class that wasn't appropriate. So even though no words were explicitly expressed, particularly to her parents, their actions effectively communicated their underlying biases about students who were not necessarily native English speakers. Although they were able to peacefully resolve the issue with with an explicit conversation that addressed explicit beliefs, it highlighted and pinpointed how an individual's belief system can actually affect the systems and policies of a school. So we have to consider that sometimes the decisions, the personal individual biases that we have, can have a broader reach on larger students and can also negatively impact systems and policies that affect a large community of students.